Chapter 61. I Am the Way, Bitch. You are listening at novelfull.audio. And I asked with supreme annoyance. This woman thought she could just push through everything that stood in her way. Then Nishi could try pushing the way, because I am the way, bitch. What is wrong with you? The massive red demon that used to be Nishi roared at me with enough force to push me back a step. Are you done yet? I asked, crossing my arms. I am still alive, and you are still flapping your gums. What is it going to be? Are you going to start smashing things, or should I? I asked, wiping some of the spit off my face. Nishi looked like she was about to start yelling at me, but then one of the women came out from the side room. The redhead had long horns that ran down the back of her head like hair, but they were thick like liddies. Please, this is pointless to keep this up, Nishi. There is something wrong with him, and no amount of intimidation will work with this one. My son would not have picked him if he didn't think that he could stand up to you, the red-headed demoness said, and then she straightened up. Nishi started to shrink in front of me, so I decided that I should step back, but instead of staying focused on her, I turned and walked over to the demoness. The other women were coming out now, but I was most interested in this one that had called Mex her son. You have a very good son, even though he might not always have the best plans, his intentions seem to be in the right place. Do you think that I could get you, women, to explain what is going on? I don't think that it is good for the two of us to continue like this, I said and motioned my head to where Nishi was behind me. Yes, come, we will go up to the top floor, and we can talk there. Is this all right, grandmother? The redhead asked Nishi, looking over my shoulder. Fine, but you had better make sure you tell him everything that I need him to know. I heard Nishi say, but I didn't bother looking back. That little witch seemed to know just how to rub me the wrong way, and it would be pointless to try and have a conversation with Nishi at this point. We were both angry, and neither seemed to like the other, but I had a feeling that Nishi didn't like anyone. Come this way. I am Parita, mother to Mex and the youngest. Once we are upstairs, I will introduce you to the rest. We will keep our hands to ourselves today since we all know about your little Gorgon that is waiting for you, Parita said and waved for me to follow into the door. Inside, I was led up inside a spiral staircase, and we had to walk far higher than was possible. I was sure that the turrets on the keep were no more than 5 stories tall, but this felt like we had already walked almost double. Hey, what is up with these stairs? And why are there no other doors for any levels? There is no way that the tower is this tall, right? I asked as we continued to walk. This is a part of the castle's magic, and we need a place that we can be far enough from Nishi. The pressure that she gives off can make it very hard to breathe or even move, and she is angrier than she isn't. I am sorry for the long trip, but we will be at the top soon, Parita explained to me. That made sense, and I looked back to see the other women that were following. They all had different shades of blue hair, but the horn styles varied. I turned back and now could see that there was a door up ahead, and that was good because I was getting tired of walking. I had already had a full day of training, and I still had to go make food for the girls, so I just wanted to get this over with. Parita opened the door, and I walked inside, but I was blown away by what I was seeing. It must be pretty interesting to someone that hasn't spent more than 200 years here, Noelle said as she moved past me into the outdoor beach that I had just walked into. Wait, what is going on? I asked and then turned around quickly. The last 3 women came through a door that floated in the air. After the last demoness with curly horns that pressed into the side of her head passed through the door, she closed it, and it stayed hanging there. I decided that it was about time to throw what I know away and just let the craziness of it all wash over. There was no point in bringing logic into this, that was just a recipe for trouble, and I knew enough recipes already. I sighed and then turned back to the beach scene where there was a medium-sized fire burning. The women gathered around the chairs that were spread around it and sat down, leaving one open for me. Please come sit down, there is much more that we need to explain to you. My name is Frida, and this is Chimera and Feralise. You have already been introduced to Noel and Parita, so now I can introduce us as a whole and explain why we are here and why this has all been kept a secret from Mex and Nushi, Frida said, motioning to the empty chair. As much as I didn't want to sit down, I had no reason to be rude or mean to these women. They were also all beautiful, so I might want to say on their good sides for any future endeavors I might find myself in with these women. Chapter 62. Look, new problems. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I settled myself down into the chair, and then Parita handed me another cup of tea on a saucer this time. I thanked her and smiled up at her and got a smile that felt like it was almost going to blow the clothes off my body, but then she turned and sat down. The crazy clothes tearing force stopped like it was never even there, and I frowned at the woman. So, I know that you all probably don't see men very much, and all, but can we get to the part where you all tell me what the hell is going on? I get the demon part in the farms, kind of, and now I am slowly starting to put together why Nishi has kept you all locked in here with her. The part that I don't understand right now is why the secret from Mex and Nushi. I asked, and Perdita is the one that spoke up again. Demons of higher ranks can read the mind of lower-ranked demons, is all that Perdita said. I blinked, and then everything made sense, like a wall of fog had been lifted. I started to put the pieces together. So, Nushi can't know cause Mex can't know, or Dao will find out, and then you will all be killed. How am I doing so far? I asked. Yes, that is the fundamental version of the glaring problem at hand, but not all of it, Noel's told me, and I nodded. Yeah, there is the problem of why. Why is he killing the women after they have a kid? Just because they are infertile. Seems pointless, I said, trying to brush off these things that were pissing me off. Getting angry now wasn't going to help, and these women were not Nishi and did not deserve my anger. So, I kept myself calm and level-headed as I waited for them to explain. There can only be so many demons in the world at one time. None of us, nor even Nishi, know what that number is, but it prevents our kind from running rampant and devouring this entire world, the one called Feralise said, and I nodded. That is the final piece then. So, DOA wants stronger demons, but how does that part work then? If there is no more room here and one demon dies, doesn't that mean that it would be the next demon to be born? I asked, but Feralise shook her head no. We don't know exactly how it works, but I have never heard of the same demon being born twice. I don't know what that means, but I would assume that there is a massive pool of them somewhere or that we are created new each time, Feralise explained to me. I sat for a moment quietly and dug inside to try to wake up. Chapter 63. Round 2, Crushed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I stood up. I had heard enough from 8 lifetimes, and it was time to go see the witch one more time before I have to go back to what I was doing. If I go out the door, so I just take the stairs down? I asked. Yes. We can send you out if you want, Perdita said with a strained look on her face, but I shook my head no. No, I think one more little wee short talk is in order between Nishi and me. You will all stay up here though, because I plan on pissing her off, so you might even still feel it up here, I said, and all the dark blue skin started to get pale, but none argued, but Frida, who had been silent the whole time, nodded to me. I'll send you down, and then you have 20 seconds to say what to want, then you will be ported above the castle. Mex won't be expecting you, but I think that you are tough enough now to survive, Frida said with a knowing smile. Then, I was standing in front of the small table and 2 chairs that had been destroyed earlier. What do you want? Nishi growled up at me from her chair, holding her tea away from me. Klesh, no more, you leave her alone. If you want to know something, you can come and ask me directly from now on, and you will stop acting like a terror to your family, I told her fast, and Nishi glared back at me. Oh. What will you do to make me? She stared up at me, so I horked and then spit. I expertly hit the teacup Nishi was holding but then quickly dodged the cup and the spray of hot tea, but the damage was done. Nishi was starting to swell up again, but I had seen this coming, and I had hoped that my assumptions about Nishi were correct, and it seemed like I was on the right track. Nishi wasn't even half as big as she was before, but I was sure that she was still more than strong enough to kill me, but that was not my point. It looked like Nishi's power was linked to her family, which made her child like attitude and how she dealt with things make even less sense. If you don't, I will leave you here when I go, and I will take all of your family with me. I am pretty sure that I could do it right now, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it, right? Your power has something to do with bonds, just like mine, and that very likely means that you are a shaman, but you are linked to this castle, so you can't leave. So, smarten up, or enjoy rotting alone while I take your family to safety because, for some reason, it means more to me than you. I said in as much of a rush as I could, and before Nishi could open her mouth, the wind was rushing at me. Great, I said out loud, but my words were devoured by the rushing wind as I started to plummet to the grass in the back part of the courtyard. The ground was coming fast, but I noticed a set of doors in the ground near the far back corner of the castle. If I survived, I would check that out, and it was going to take less than 5 seconds to find out. I do not suggest trying to fly without a pair of wings, Mech said as he grabbed me about 5 meters from testing my resistance to dying. Yeah, I remember that the next time I get shit out of a paint can. What the hell just happened to me? I asked, trying to play it off, and Mech's already had an explanation waiting for me. Wumpus holes, they happen in the area a lot, and there is really no way to predict them. So, when you disappeared, but Mary was still here, I knew what it had to be. So, I was watching for you, but my wife distracted me. Also, you had better go deal with that woman, or she might start tearing down the castle to find you. Mech said with no smile and then made me grin a bit as Mech set me done. Your wife distracted you? I asked curiously. I found it hard to believe that Nishi would act so fast, but how was I supposed to know how things worked? Everything in this world was so far out of what I considered the norm, that I wasn't sure which way was up at this point. Yes, Klesh came to apologize to me and said that she would stop watching over me. Strange, but it's not like I can complain. Now she will stop getting so mad at me every time I leave the keep. Mech said and then started to laugh. I was still trying to wrap my head around Mechs and the Sphinx, but as soon as my mind got into the details, I realized that I wasn't that interested. Still, I was glad that she actually listened to me, but now I had a feeling that I would be seeing a whole lot of her. Okay, well, thanks for saving me, I said, rubbing the back of my head, but Mechs laughed at me. Saving? That wouldn't have killed you. PFT, a broken bone or two, but you would be back up in a short bit. I guess you haven't had a chance to hurt yourself yet, so yes, I don't think that you will need this right away to entertain her, Mech said casually, but then out of nowhere, grabbed my hand and crushed it in his grip, breaking an untold number of bones. The pain was pretty bad, but my hand had just been crushed, so, pretty bad was pretty good, I guess. Yet, when Mechs let go of my hand, it was thoroughly mangled to the point where it hardly looked like a hand anymore. Chapter 64. Sex, and Surviving It. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Really? Was that necessary? I shouted and then growled, but Mechs just nodded at me. You are going to have sex with a creature far stronger than you are, and you are going to end up with a few broken bones, but you don't want to let that ruin your fun. Now, look at your hand again, Mech said to me, and my eyes spread wide in surprise. Whoa! What the hell? How is this even possible? I asked in shock as I watched my hand fix itself. That is part of the reason when you have been doing this training. Your normal body composition is 70% water, but beings on this world are made of 70% mana or energy. Doesn't matter what you call it, the name doesn't change what it does, Mechs explained. Okay, so then if I get hurt, I will just heal. Does that mean I will be invincible when I am done with this training? I asked with a strained look, but Mechs just laughed at me. You can be killed just the same as before. If I cut your head off, it will not grow back. If I draw a rock on you that crushes you or hack your limbs off, your body will not be able to keep up. Maybe if you train at this your entire life, then you might be. The point of this is to keep you from dying from normal interactions with beings of this world, Mex explained, and I started to understand where he was coming from, but I was still a bit confused about the part with the girls. Chapter 65. Cool lips, and watching them disappear. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I walked into the keep and was surprised to find that Mex was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. I had pulled Mary's tail out of my pants before coming in and ended up stumbling onto a sensitive place at the end of her tail. I guessed that you might want to clean off, so I thought that I might direct you to it. Least I could do for you, thanks, Mex said and started to turn, but I grabbed his arm in confusion to stop him. What are you thanking me for this time? I asked with a raised eyebrow. I wasn't really sure what to think at this point. So much had happened that it could be a number of things. For talking to Klesh, what else? She told me that you talked to her about the spying that she was doing, and she was able to convince Nishi to stop it. I don't know what you said or did to my wife, but whatever it is, do it more. Preferably when I am not around, but personally, I don't care if I am home. Mex said with a big smile and then turned to leave me. What? So that is how Nishi is going to play it, but now Mex thinks that I fucked his wife into a better mood and just told me to do it more. Demons were stranger than fiction, but Mex was happy, and so was his wife, so everyone was winning in my mind. I followed Mex around the left water fountain and was led to a large door where Mex stopped and turned to me. There are extra shorts in there and towels for when you two are done. I think that I am going to go out and celebrate. Maybe I will go and see if I can get Candace in a better mood, so she doesn't try to kill you tomorrow. Mex said, snapping his finger as if he had just figured it all out, and then walked away from me. As I was about to leave, Mex called back to me and I shook my head and walked away. Oh, and if you still have energy after, don't be afraid to help keep my wife in a good mood, Mex called, but the door was already closing behind me. Inside was a large in-ground pool that was steaming, and the rest of the room was bare except for a stand that held towels, gel soap, and one pair of shorts. I had to give it to Mex, he was an excellent host. Ready to get clean, my little fish. When Mary slowly turned around, she looked at me as she slowly slid around my body to face me. I is not a fish, Casps. I am your mermaids. Mary said cutely, and I slowly took her face into my hands. I don't care what you are, as long as you are mine, I said and then gently pulled Mary's face into a kiss. Mary responded and moved with me, pressing her cool lips in mine, and I felt a warm wave of pleasure. I felt it course through my body, and I could also feel Mary trying to take my pants off, so I let go of her face and helped her. Mary continued to kiss me as I removed them, and then I slowly walked into the water, wrapping my arms around her. The warm water crept up my legs and gave me a slight shock when it reached my waist, but then something else happened. The feeling of Mary being wrapped around me changed, and then she broke from my kiss, slipping out of my hands. I opened my eyes back up to watch her slip under the water with her mermaid tail making a splash. The water wasn't very deep, but it was up to my chest in the deepest part, so it gave Mary more than enough room to move around. The pool was 3 meters square, and I decided to let Mary play for a bit, and I went and grabbed the soap and a cloth. I sat down on the steps of the pools and started to wash myself off, but as I did, Mary swam over. She poked her head up in between my legs with a bright smile and stretched up to kiss me, her breasts dragging up my chest. Can you cleanse me tuss? The moment Mary had finished kissing me, she hissed at me, and I smiled back at her, acknowledging her. Yes, come sit with me, and I will get you cleaned, I replied. I then picked Mary up and snuggled her close against my chest as I closed my legs for her to sit. I started to scrub soap all over her body, and that made her giggle to the point where she finally just slipped right off my leg and back into the water, but I had got most of her cleaned. Now I just needed to get myself cleaned off, and I let myself slide into the water. Mary was waiting for me, and came directly to me, and started to kiss me. At first, I was worried that I was going to drown if she kept me under too long, but the moment that Mary's mouth closed over mine, I no longer felt the need to breathe. I was ready to lose myself in the kiss and let things go as they wanted, but Mary had other plans. She stopped kissing me and then looked down at my erection that was pulsing from my excitement. I was forced out of the water, but only up to my chest, and I was forced back to the steps, and Mary popped her head out of the water. She looked at me with her stone eyes with so much emotion that I was becoming aroused, but not like I wasn't already. "I wants to taste this you," Mary hissed as I felt her hands wrap around me, and my heartbeat started to race as I watched Mary slowly sink into the water again. Chapter 66. Mary. 1 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mary sunk down, and I felt her hands slip around my swollen shaft, and I waited with building anticipation. Suddenly, I felt Mary's cool lips wrap around my rod, and I let out a small pleasurable groan as I felt her take all of me inside of her. I was surprised that Mary wanted to do this for me, or that she wanted to do this at all, but I wasn't about to start complaining. I had thought that she would just want me to fuck her, and then it would be over, but that didn't seem to be the case with Mary. I could feel her long tongue moving around my shaft as she sucked on me, and I had to resist the urge to grab the back of Mary's head. The waves of pleasure she was making me feel made me want to push myself deep into her mouth, but this wasn't Liddy. I reached my hands into the water to run my handles gently over Mary's snakes, and that made her move faster. All I could do was lean back and let out small groans as Mary started to suck harder, making my eyes roll up, but then it stopped. I looked down, and then I was pulled under the water without being able to resist. Once I was under, Mary pulled herself up to my face and started to kiss me, and I took her into my arms. The moment we started to kiss, I was filled with air, and I was able to fully enjoy the kiss we shared. I slid my hands down Mary's back and then over her sexy ass bump and gave it a soft squeeze. That seemed to make her more excited, and I felt her push her body into mine harder. Mary's tail was between my legs, and now I could feel her slit rubbing against my shaft. Mary slipped her tongue into my mouth, and it was almost more than I could handle, but at the same time, I didn't want to stop. Mary twisted her long snake tongue around mine and moved it like she had when she was sucking me off. I squeezed Mary's ass harder, and she started to grind my cock harder. Then she slid down my body a bit more, and I felt the tip of my rod split her flesh. Mary immediately slowed down, and her kisses became softer as she slowly moved back and forth to fit me inside of her. I should have assumed that she would be this tight, but I could feel that Mary was having trouble, and I was not going to fit without hurting her. I pulled us out of the water and pushed back to the steps with Mary, taking myself out of her. That wasn't hard since I had barely even got the tip in, but now Mary had a worried look on her face. "Is too bigs?" Mary hissed with a sad tone, but I leaned forward and kissed her. "It is big, but not too big. You just need a bit of help from me to loosen you up first. Come sit in my lap, and I will help you," I said to Mary, and her eyes lit up with excitement, and she was in my lap facing me. "Likest this?" Mary hissed with excitement, and I shook my head. I turned her around in my lap, so her back was to my chest. Then I started to kiss her neck gently, and Mary started to moan softly. "Just lay back like this against me," I said, but Mary turned her head back to me in confusion. "How can't you helps me if you can't put it in's me?" Mary asked, but my hand was already sliding down her waist. "Just relaxed, and I will take care of you, beautiful," I said, and then Mary let out a gasp as my fingers slid down into her folds. "What's are you do.o.o.o.ing?" Mary asked as she moaned out the last word, and I stopped, but then Mary growled at me. "Don't stop that, pleases. I didn't know that you knew how to dos that," Mary said with excitement as she moaned more. As I moved my fingers around on the small ball, I took one of Mary's large teal-colored breasts in my hand and started to grope it. I took her nipple into my fingers and squeezed it, pulling gently on them. Mary turned her head to mine and started to kiss me again as I played with her. Then I let my big middle finger slowly slide into her to slit and inside of her. It was different from fingering a human girl. I didn't need to reach down and then stick my finger back up inside. Instead, I was able to slide my finger straight down towards her back, and then Mary started to push into my hand as I pushed deep inside. I could feel her start to loosen, so I removed my fingers, and then Mary pulled back from kissing me. She slid off me and then took me by the hand to pull me back into the water, and I let her. Mary moved to the same position and started to kiss me again, filling my lungs with air so I could concentrate. This time I spun so, Mary was lying on the bottom of the pool, and I reached down in between my legs to grab my rock-hard shaft that was aching to pierce into this mermaid's body. I rubbed the tip of my rod into her slit as we kissed and then slowly pushed it inside of Mary's still very tight pussy, but it was going in. At first, Mary let me slowly work myself into her, but then she got impatient, and wrapped her arms around me, and then forced herself onto my cock. I felt the stretching, but I didn't have time to react as Mary crushed me in a bear hug as the shock and pain of what she just did moved through her body, and then she was still in the water. Chapter 67. Mary. 2 You are listening at novelfull.audio. I was all the way inside of her, but I was having trouble breathing now, and Mary wasn't moving. That must have hurt her far more than she thought it would have, and now I was almost positive that I had multiple fractured or broken ribs from the squeeze. The two of us floated, not making any movements, but Mary's grip on me was slowly loosening. Slowly, Mary started to kiss me again, and then I felt her start to move her hips, but very gently. I could feel my ribs healing, and now it was back to normal breathing for me. Mex was right, and I probably would have been crushed to death there without proper training. I held myself up a bit, and I let Mary move her own body as we kissed. The feeling of her hot pussy gripping my tight shaft and slowly moving was starting to make my blood rush, and I had to control myself. I just wanted to drive my cock into her tight little slit until she could move her tail, but I wanted her to enjoy this. I had to assume that it would be her first time, and I didn't want to make it rough for her. Then Mary started to move faster, but it was awkward with the water rushing in after every thrust. I picked Mary up while she was still fucking me, but then I stood up with her in my arms, pulling out of the water. Mary wrapped her arms around my neck, and I took her tail between my legs, and then Mary started to move a lot faster. As much fun as the water was, there was too much resistance, and now Mary was fucking me harder, slamming her slippery wet down over my shaft. This was an awkward position for me, so the best I could do was to hold her hips and help her go deep onto my hard-throbbing cock. I could feel the pressure starting to build up inside of me, and I knew I was close, but Mary must be the same because she started to slam her hips into me even harder. New skill. Impregnate. When you copulate with one of your monster girls, you have the choice to impregnate them. Fills me ups. I want your seed in me. Mary cried out in an erotic hiss, and I could not hold it back anymore. Impregnate. Activated. I gripped Mary by her ass cheeks and then forced her all the way down onto my cock, and I let the dam go. Mary wanted to get pregnant, and if I didn't try, she would for sure get angry with me. Jilly had pointed out as much. Mary cried out and then dug her nails deep into my back, and I filled her tight pussy with my hot cum. The pleasure blocked out the pain at first, but then I realized just how bad she had gotten when I could see blood starting to color the water below. Sorry, didn't want to hurt you, but it felt so goods, Mary hissed at me softly, still slowly moving back and forth on my cock. It's okay, I have been training, so I will heal from this in no time. I do not mind the pain, and if it means that I get to do this with you, I can handle it, I said with a smile, and I could feel that I had already stopped bleeding and the wounds were closing back up. They would probably heal faster after I had more training, and then I could recover from these things faster or just not be hurt by them. At some point, my body was going to have to start getting more robust, or I should be able to get used to this, or I would have to start tying them up first. That might not make the sex as much fun with some of them, and the only person I really wanted to tie up was Nushi. I think that girl needs a man that will dominate her and tell her what she likes, or sex would just be awkward because Nushi was such a shy girl. Mary pulled herself off my shaft that was only now shrinking, but she still moved slowly, and each move made her moan more. After she was off me, I slowly sank back into the water with her, and Mary broke for me to start swimming like nothing had just happened, but I didn't really expect much less from her. I walked over to the soap, and grabbed a cloth, and started to scrub myself. Even though I had been in the water, I had 2 days of work on dirt that needed to go, so I scrubbed with my fervor. Then, I felt Mary slide up behind me, and press her chest into my back, and then a lick on my neck. I was mostly done cleaning now, but Mary reached off and took the soapy cloth from me and started to wash my back with it. "Can't I sleep in your bed?" Mary hissed next to my ear, and even though I had just blown my load inside of Mary, the suggestion was almost enough to get me back into working order for round 2 right now. "Yes, beautiful. You can come and sleep with me tonight," I said to Mary, and she started to kiss my neck, sending waves of pleasure down my body. "Goots, I want more seed," Mary hissed cutely, but I turned to her. "I did fill you with my seed, and now you should be pregnant," I said to her, but Mary just shook her head with a smile at me. "I know, but now I want the big thing to put more seed in my hole, please." Mary hissed with big eyes looking up at me, and I just smiled and nodded. Who the fuck could say no to this little angel? If Mary wants me to fill her up more, then yes, I would do that for her because I am a good guy, and I like to give girls what they want. Sue me. Chapter 68. Waking up earlier, and the nerve. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After drying Mary off and getting the clean pair of shorts that had been left for me, I picked her up. Mary was still not wearing any clothes, but I was no longer concerned by it as she wrapped herself around me. "Are you ready to go get something to eat now?" "I will probably have to cook it, but it shouldn't take very long," I said to Mary as she slid around to press her soft and smooth breasts into my back. "Yes, but I want to go lace down," Mary hissed into my ear, and I nodded. "Sure, I will take you up top to my room before I start making food. Then after I am done feeding the rest of the girls, I will come up and feed you before we go to sleep, okay?" I said as I pushed the door open to leave the bathroom. "Yes, I would like us that," Mary said to me, and then she cuddled into my back as I started walking. The keep was empty, from what I could tell, but there weren't usually people moving around at the same time. So, there wasn't really much to compare it to, but something did feel different now. I left the castle and turned left to head back to the new apartment that Jilly had constructed. It was well into the evening, but I wasn't sure what time it was exactly, but it had to be getting late if the moon was already up and it was completely dark. "So, did you two enjoy your time?" The sound of Nishi's voice coming from behind me almost removed my soul from my body, and I whirled around on the pest. "What do you want now? Have I not been through enough today with you?" I asked while glaring down at the little old red-skinned woman. "I would have thought that you would be in a better mood considering." Nishi trailed off with a knowing smile, but I was not in the mood for this woman right now, so I turned and started walking. Suddenly, Nishi was standing in front of me, but I just sidestepped her and kept walking to my destination. I could hear a growl coming from the woman, and then she called out a threat. "If you don't stop, I will move into your room so you can't," Nishi started to say, but then I felt Mary turn on my back as I walked. "If you come in the room, Will eats you. He is mine tonight." Mary hissed dangerously. That made me laugh out loud, and I decided to turn and see what the hag wanted. I didn't doubt either of the women, so it was probably best to deal with this now rather than fight later. "Fine, what do you want? I don't understand why you couldn't wait till the morning," I said, putting my hands on my hips. "I don't have to tell you anything. But, I decided to let you know that it would be best for you to leave early. If you are fast enough, you will be able to sneak past Mex and that flying cat he is screwing to get to Jezebel. I also suggest that you bring sweets and salt, which should help you with getting her home, and then you can go back out to do your training, Nishi explained to me. Once she had started talking, I took my hands off my hips and actually started to listen to what Nishi had to say. For some reason, the woman was deciding to be helpful, and I wasn't about to let free info go, just because I didn't like her. Thank you for telling me that, but why? I might not have gotten in as easy, but I would have found my way in. So, what is the point of all this? Not that I don't appreciate it, I just don't understand why you are willing to be helpful all of a sudden. I questioned Nishi, and she just shrugged at me. It is in my best interests, like you said. The sooner you can get stronger, the sooner we will leave this island, but if you constantly do things the hard way, we will all be long dead before that happens, Nishi told me, and I narrowed my eyes at her. If it wasn't one thing, it was the other. What is going to kill us? What new disaster is waiting for us now? I asked, trying not to roll my eyes, but then Mary started to get restless, and I could tell that she wanted to go. Wait, you can come and talk to me while I cook food. I need to take Mary upstairs first, and then I will come down and talk to you. I don't think that is a good idea, Nishi will be in there, and she is terrified of me, Nishi said, but I was already turning around. Maybe if you talk to her rather than just hovering like death around her, she might not be so scared of you. Also, if you stopped with the stupid pressure that you like to put everyone under, that might help out as well, I said as I finally made it to the door to my new home and walked inside before Nishi had a chance to give me another excuse. Inside, the girls were sitting around, and Jilly was relaxing in her oversized cushion. The girls all turned to look at Mary and me, and I smiled at them but didn't get any in return. About time you two got back here. When are you going to make something to eat? Jilly complained, and I smiled at her. Sorry, I will get back down here as soon as I get Mary up to bed. We will also be having Nishi join me in the kitchen if she has the nerve to show up, I said, and almost right on cue, Nishi appeared to defend herself. I have the nerve. And I will join you, so get back down here. Nishi growled, but then Nishi screamed at the top of her lungs in fear. Oh boy, here we go. Like the book. It would help out a lot if you could leave a review of what you think of the book so far. Chapter 69. Tucked in, I needed extra help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Why did you invite her? Nishi screamed at me as we walked up the stairs, but then Mary hissed dangerously at her. SSSS. You don't have us to be so loud. He can hears you. Mary warned, and Nishi stopped yelling. I asked her to come, and I know you are scared of her, but I told you that I would keep you safe from her. I don't plan on breaking that promise I made to you, so I need you to trust me, I said to Nishi, and then added another thing that might help her see reason. You can always just keep your book out, and you will know what she is thinking, right? Nishi paused and then looked up at me with an embarrassed look that made her horns start flapping. I smiled and patted the middle of her head, and then her horns stood back up to the full height. Okay, I will try, but don't mess around. Jilly has been complaining about you and Mary since the two of you have left, so I suggest you get some food to feed her. I am also starving, so please. Nishi asked, and I nodded to her. Yes, beautiful. I will be down right away to cook, and I will try to make something that doesn't take too long, okay? I said to Nishi, but the lightning started to crackle from her horns, and she ran away with burning cheeks. I couldn't help but smile as I turned back and made my way up to the 5th floor. When I reached the top of the building, there were 2 rooms, but Mex had already put a sign up. The paper looked like a child had drawn it, and it said, "Not your room," on his door to the right, so I opened the door to the left. Inside was nothing special, and there was only a bed with a single dresser that had 3 drawers in the room. I didn't need to check to see what was in the drawers, there wouldn't be anything but shorts, my new standard wardrobe. I walked over to the bed and pulled the covers back from the bed. Mary slid off me and into the bed and then got settled in. After she was comfortable, I leaned in and gave her a kiss. Mary tried to pull me down with her, but I pulled away, then tucked her in. I will be back in a little bit, so wait for me, okay? I will bring some tasty treats for you and the snakes when I come back, I said, and Mary just nodded and smiled at me. I paused for a second to enjoy that smile, but then I remembered what I was doing and turned to run back down the stairs. I would have time later to look at that adorable smile and maybe get a taste of Mary's sweets if she will let me. Soon, I was back down in the living room area, but the girls were all gone from there, but Jilly. She still was lying on her bed, and I was going to go over to talk to her, but the look I got from her said that I better be handing her food and not opening my mouth to talk. I turned and headed to the kitchen and sighed when I got there. I could see both Nushi and the Cerberus girls hiding behind Liddy, who was looking good, only wearing her apron, and I turned to find Nishi in the far corner of the room. "Thank goodness you have finally got here," Liddy said with a smile and a look that seemed to be designed to cut off my shorts. Luckily these shorts were made of stern stuff, and I walked over to where Liddy and the girls were. "I can take over now, thank you very much for getting this all ready for me," I said as I looked at the prepared meats on sheets. I wished I had some kind of helper for this, or I could give Liddy some kind of skill to help me with the cooking. Mex was right, this was going to turn out to be a big job, but at the same time, I didn't need to make and feed them every meal. "Liddy, if you don't mind, from now on, if I am going to be late, can you start cooking without me? I don't want the girls to all have to wait for me like this, and I also won't always be able to feed them when I am out," I said to Liddy, and she gave me a warm smile. "Yes, I was hoping that you would ask me. Did you like the meal that I sent for you with Nushi?" Liddy asked, and I gave her a smile in return. If I said that it wasn't the best meal that I had ever had, I would be lying. The food was beyond great, and honestly, I don't think that my system's cooking skill can even compare to the food you can make. I said with a smile, but Liddy shook her head at me. "Don't talk like that when other people are around, or I might ask you for something that I like." "And I don't think that the girls want to see that," Liddy said, and that made me visibly gulp down some air. This woman was a sexual beast, and even her simple warning made my heartbeat start to race. I looked away quickly, avoiding looking at the other girls, and started to put the meat in the oven. Once I was done, I went over to where Nishi was sitting, took a chair that wasn't too far from her, and sat down. Nushi came over and crouched down behind my chair, but the Cerberus girls came to sit on the ground transformed beside my chair. That I scratched the girls' heads and then looked up to Nishi, but she wasn't looking at me. She was glaring at Nushi, and I could feel her shaking. I was about to snap on Nishi, but she spoke up before me. Why can't I read her mind? Chapter 70. Revealed, like it was all a joke. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That isn't a bad thing, and it's probably the same reason I can't read her book if she doesn't want me to, I said, and Nishi glared at me. What are you talking about? Nishi asked, and I felt the Cerberus girls starting to tense. What did I tell you? I can't stop you from acting like a spoiled child inside your room, but you will not try to intimidate my friends inside of my own house, or you can leave. I don't have to answer anything that you say, and I don't really want to talk to you, I said, and Nushi gasped in my ear, startling me. I hadn't even noticed her get close, and her deep breath inhalation was almost in my ear, making me turn to her face. When I did, Nushi turned her head into mine, and our faces pressed together. I wouldn't call it a kiss, Nushi pulled back too quickly, and our lips had barely grazed each other. Nushi's horns started to crackle as she pulled back, and I thought I was about to get it, but then the crackling got closer. I had my hand on Ree's head, and she was no longer shaking, but the other two were still. That just meant that they were still scared of Nishi, even without the pressure, and that was to be expected. Fine, tell me how it is that I can't read her mind then, Nishi said in a somewhat calm voice, but I could tell that Nishi was trying to keep her temper in check. That was the best I could hope for. Do you know about the abilities that I have given the girls? It happens when I take them into my care and confirm that I will look after them. I asked, and Nishi nodded to me. Yes, I know about the systems, but I thought that they were only reserved for the heroes. Why can you just give them away? Nishi asked in confusion, but I smiled at her. I was offered a powerful system at the beginning when I first arrived on the island, but I refused it. I don't need to get into my reasons that deeply, I started to say, but Nishi added her 2 cents. It's because you're an idiot. Why else would you deny something that could make you stronger? Nishi commented, and I just shrugged. That is a matter of opinion, and what good did it do the ones that came before me? I can't say that it had anything to do with choice because it had nothing to do with it. If I would have made a choice to take it, I would more than likely be dead already, and I wouldn't be able to deal with you, I explained, shaking my head. My reasons were my own, and I didn't need to explain them to everyone that asked. Most of the time I just got looks that asked if I was stupid, but you needed to walk a mile in my shoes before judging my choices. Nishi still had her eyes narrowed at me, but she was bobbing my head along to the points I was making, so I had to assume she was getting it. Nushi had come around to the other side of me and then pulled a chair closer to sit beside me. Nushi was nearly crawling to get on top of me. She stayed so close to me that she almost had her legs over the top of mine. I don't even think that Nushi noticed what she was doing. All she did was stare wide-eyed at Nishi. Fine, so you didn't take the system offered. That doesn't explain how the girls got their powers. Nishi complained, and then I went over the rest of the story until we arrived at the keep. After I was done, Nishi was back to looking Nushi over, and at this point, the girl wasn't even sitting in her own chair anymore. I am not going to eat you, and I did not eat your grandmothers, Nishi said very slowly, and Nushi looked back at me with an aggressive amount of confusion plastered all over her face. It's true, I just met all your grandmothers, and they all seem like nice ladies, and I am sure that Nishi will let you visit with them, I said, but Nushi wasn't the one to speak, it was Nishi that started to laugh. I turned to her with a raised eyebrow, but Nishi just put her hand out to get me to wait until she could get herself under control. Nushi was frozen in place, and it was time to get up and check the meat out, but Nushi wasn't moving. PFT, you think that they are nice ladies, but that is only because you have only met them on time, and none of them were able to corner you alone or in pairs. Maybe you should bring Nushi for a visit tomorrow. I am sure that they are all the more comfortable around you, and they will take excellent care of you, Nishi said with a wink, and I looked down at Nushi, stuck with a frozen look on her face. This reveal must have been just too much for her after living in fear for so long. Now, it was like we were telling her that it has all just been some elaborate joke. I had no choice but to slide my hand under Nushi's bottom and lift her up with me. Nushi unconsciously leaned into me and wrapped her arms around my neck as I walked over to the oven. Liddy had signaled to me that they were done, and when I got over there, she handed me a thick potholder and then opened the oven for me. I smiled and thanked her after I was done with Nushi still resting on me without saying a peep. I pulled the loose leaf dagger and held it out to the meat, giving it mental instructions on how I wanted the meat cut. Once I was finished, Liddy grabbed the platter of cut meat and followed me to where Jilly was waiting. Before I left the room, I turned back to tell Nishi that I would come in the afternoon with Nushi, but she was gone already.